After my uncle's death, my baby and I were transferred under the charge of Sir William Pictory at Ingatestone House in Essex, where we stayed for the next 18 months. Our life in the confinement was not eventful, as you can guess. It was an emotional torture for me not to be able to write to my beloved or get any letters from him, by the Queen's order. The only two things which kept me alive were my little Thomas, for whom I pulled myself together, and the sparkle of hope I still had to be reunited with my husband and eldest son. As for Hertford, he had good cause to regret living under his mother's roof, for the Duchess, who had always discountenanced our marriage, made him feel his error in a most unpleasant manner. She was, as she said, tired of the whole matter, and wished she had never heard of me or of my family, for no good had come of it. She did not, however, refuse to assist her son in his difficulties, but she did so in an unfriendly way, so that Edward's time at Hanworth must have been the reverse of pleasant, particularly as the Duchess's husband, Mr. Newdigate, made himself exceedingly disagreeable and interfering. The situation continued until May 1564, when Hertford was suddenly sent from Hanworth to the custody of another person. In 1566, my misfortune took another negative turn when I was sent to Sir John Wentworth's very dreary mansion, Gosfield Hall, Essex. The official order to receive me must have been a heavy blow to Sir John, for on May 14th of that year he wrote a letter to the Privy Council, declaring himself a most unmeet man to receive such a charge, being of old age and much visited with sickness, and his wife being so sick she could not go so much as unto her garden to take any air. Gosfield Hall at this juncture somewhat resembled a hospital, for in addition to the sick Wentworth and his wife, their daughter, the Lady Maltravers, lay there, so ill that she could not see anyone. To crown all these objections, Sir John informed the council that his house is the last in which I would be safe, for all the times in the night they may come to the windows of every chamber in his house, or talk with me or deliver letters unto me, or if I was so disposed, I may either let them into my chamber, or go out to them at the loops of the windows, they are so great and wide. He added that indeed, it would be better for him to be imprisoned himself than to take up a task like this, which he could not fulfill. Unfortunately for the poor man, Elizabeth had visited Gosfield Hall on one of her progresses, and remembered the house well enough not to place much faith in its being so very unsafe a residence for her afflicted prisoner. No notice accordingly seems to have been taken of Sir John's letter, and so we proceeded, with my retinue and all my pets. And Elizabeth had good cause to wish me to be kept very secure. In fact, on account of the agitation in my favour, thus imprisoned, I was almost as great a thorn in the Queen's side as if I had been free. The party which supported my claims to the throne was now stronger than ever, so had it merely depended on a vote in Parliament, I would certainly have been nominated, for the Protestant Party, who were greatly in the majority in the Commons, were furiously in favour of me. At the head of the movement was Cecil. On the other hand, the Lords were mostly in favour of the Queen of Scots, since Catholic influence was strong in the upper house. By the year 1566 the Protestant party in Parliament was waxing so irritable at the Queen's persistent refusal to name her successor, that during the autumn session of that year they boldly threatened to refuse to vote Her Majesty further financial supplies, unless she consented to come to a decision in the matter. The tension was so great, that on one occasion a regular hand-to-hand fight took place in full Parliament between my supporters and their opponents. Not daring, however, to starve out Elizabeth in the way proposed, the Protestant party next tried to bribe the Queen into consenting to their proposals by offering to vote her without discussion £250,000, on the sole condition that she allowed them to nominate her successor, in which case they would choose me as her heir. Elizabeth, exasperated beyond endurance at such insolence this time, replied that on no account would she allow this nomination to be discussed further, that she refused to make any conditions whatever, and that they ought to have the decency to vote supplies from motives of pure patriotism, instead of from interest or party gain. The Queen must have felt that her position was very insecure, and with her characteristic vindictiveness, she would have taken more drastic measures against those who had dared to offer her such an obvious affront. for all that she severely reprimanded the Parliament in her prorogation speech and had a violent quarrel with Norfolk, Leicester, and other noblemen for daring to discuss the matter. Finally, she issued an order to the effect that no allusion was to be made to it in Parliament under pain of punishment. The agitation in my favour continued, however in secret, and the accusations against Mary Stuart of having connived at her husband Darnley's murder were brought forward by the Protestant Party, principally in order to benefit me by injuring the reputation of the Catholic Queen of Scots, who was the rival claimant to the succession. On the night that Darnley's death became known in London, Leicester sent his brother to Hertford to offer him his services in the matter of the succession, and Lord Robert himself went to see the Duchess of Somerset, Edward's mother, with the same object, and has made friends with them both contrary to his former action. Earlier he had supported the Queen of Scots, and had been extremely averse to my claim. So it is strange that he should have veered round so suddenly, unless he felt convinced that my chances of succeeding Elizabeth were now better than ever, and deemed it good policy to be on the winning side. No doubt Elizabeth was aware that Edward and I were to become dangerous again, for in December 1567 Hertford's imprisonment became stricter than ever. Meanwhile I remained for some 17 months, at Gosfield, until Sir John Wentworth's death in 1567 obliged the Queen to make a fresh disposal of me. Lady Wentworth still lived on, but besides her great age, which was 71 years, she was grieven by the sorrow of her late husband's death, so weak and sickly as it is to be feared she could not long continue without she shortly amend. I felt Elizabeth had me to Gosfield with the deliberate intention of driving me melancholy mad. I stayed on for several weeks in the house of death and mourning until by Elizabeth's order we were covered to Cockfield Hall in Yoxford, and committed to the custody of Sir Owen Hopton. Very soon after my arrival at Cockfield, though already in a deep decline, I fell dangerously ill. Sorrow, anxiety, and hope deferred had done their work, and Sir Owen Hopton decided to send for the Queen's physician, who left for London somewhere in January 1568. I was much worse since the doctor's departure. Sir Owen ordered the doctor to come back right away. He did come back, but as soon as he beheld I was evidently dying, he warned my weeping attendants that my end was near. My attendants and Lady Hopton endeavoured to persuade me that I would live, but I, being entirely reconciled to the idea of death, would not listen to them. I knew my time was come, and it was not God's will I should live longer. On January 26th, at about 7 o'clock in the morning, I desired Sir Owen should be sent for, and said, "I beseech you promise me one thing, that you yourself, with your own mouth, will make this request unto the Queen's Majesty, which shall be the last suit and request I ever shall make to her Highness, even from the mouth of a dead woman, that she would forgive her displeasure towards me, as my hope is she hath done. I must needs confess I have greatly offended her, in that I made my choice without her knowledge, otherwise I take God to witness, I had never the heart to think any evil against her Majesty, and that she would be good unto my children, and not impute my fault unto them, whom I give wholly to her Majesty, for in my life they had few friends, and fewer shall they have when I am dead, except her Majesty be gracious unto them, and I desire her Highness to be good unto my Lord. Know this my death will be heavy news to him, that her Grace will be so good as to send liberty to gladden his heart withal." Then I lifted my wedding ring from my jewel box and asked Sir Owen to deliver it to my Lord, and pray him, even as I have been to him, as I take God to witness I have been, a true and faithful wife, that he will be a loving and natural father to our children, to whom I give the same blessing that God gave unto Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I took out yet another ring, with a death's head enamelled on it and the words, "While I live yours," and said, "This shall be the last token to my Lord that ever I shall send him, it is the picture of myself." Then, closing my eyes with my own hands I murmured just as my sister Lady Jane Grey had done, when on the scaffold 14 years earlier, "Lord, into thy hands I commend my spirit." And thus I yielded unto God my spirit at 9 o'clock in the morning of the 27th of January 1568. I was only 27 years of age at the time of my death. Elizabeth finally had her way. My funeral took place on February 21, 1568, in Yoxford Church. There were 77 mourners, but nobody of great note was present, and needless to say, Hertford was not allowed to attend, even by proxy. There was no monument to me in Yoxford Church, but a small black stone in the chancel was, according to local tradition, said to mark my resting place. And they say, my little pet spaniel was, for weeks, seen to come daily to my grave, upon which it was one morning found dead.